Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a lot of Fridays. We've got a great show today. I'm looking forward to it. The point of the show, though, is to have best-selling authors, CEOs, corporate leaders, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can all learn from, that we can all take from this show, and we can go back and apply in our own businesses and our own organizations. Now, the fun part about that is that the show can be interactive, but you've got to ask questions in order for that to happen. Now, you can do that on LinkedIn. You can do that on Facebook. You can do it on Twitter, and you can do that on YouTube. I think you can also do it on Twitch, but I don't know how to work on Twitch. So you're on your own on Twitch if you do it there. So if you like the program, give it a like or share, and so that your network can benefit from the conversations, and we get the side benefit of growing our audience. Now, today, I've got an amazing person that I can't wait for you to meet. And you've probably hopefully already read the book. Dr. Stephen Rogelberg. He holds the title of Chancellor's Professor at UNC Charlotte. He is a professor of organizational science, management, and psychology. His work has been featured on NPR, CBS, the Chicago Tribune, LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, to just name a few, and Washington Post. His new book is called best-selling book, The Surprising Science of Meetings, How You Can Lead Your Team to Peak Performance. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's fun to do this. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, I wanted to have you on the program because I think we all think as leaders and people who hold meetings that we do it well. And if I read the book correctly, we're probably not doing it so well. And so I wanted to have you on so that we could all learn from your work, because it's science-based, it's research-based, and I think it's spot on. And so I want to know, what inspired you to write the book? I mean, 15 years of research. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I'm an organizational psychologist. Okay. And as an organizational psychologist, my passion is doing research on topics that are really frustrating to people, and with the hope of trying to provide some evidence-based solutions to make things better. And definitely meetings fit that bill, right? I mean, there are so many of them, and frustrations at an all-time high. And then personally, meetings drive me bonkers. And so when you put that all together, it was a perfect storm that I wanted to engage on this topic. And to my surprise, there really was not much research at all going on around it.
That's incredible. And if I read correctly, you talk about 55 million meetings a day just in the U.S.
Yes.
That's staggering, the amount of time, the amount of money that's costing for something that's not working really.
Yeah, I mean, and when you can think of it as time, you can think about it as money, you can also think about it as opportunity costs, right? People could be doing something else that was constructive. But we also know from our research that there are some, fatigue and drain and stress consequences of poorly run meetings. We even have some data to suggest that something called meeting recovery syndrome.
You got to be kidding me. There's a syndrome from
So this idea, when you have a bad meeting, you just don't leave it at the door. It affects your performance and productivity after the meeting as well.
Okay. Well, what is, you have to, obviously the next question is, what are the biggest complaints? Where are we falling down on the job as meeting leaders? What's in that research and that you found? What is the biggest complaint that you hear, or complaints, I guess?
Yeah, it's really better to think of it as a constellation of complaints.
Okay.
As opposed to just one. I do want to say at the onset that I think what our research generally shows is that there's not a good meeting and a bad meeting. That typically in almost any meeting, there's some proportion of that time that's good, right, and there's some proportion that's bad. So there's this ratio. And right now we're finding around 50% of the time is not an effective use of time. Okay. Which I think is incredibly high. You imagine if everything in life, only 50% of the time it was good. I think that would suggest that you're not making good choices.
Right.
So what are some of the common complaints during the not effective time? So some of the common complaints could be, I don't know why I'm there.
Okay.
Not needed. It could be that there are people that are dominating the conversation, steamrolling their ideas, not truly listening to other people. It's a leader that's not truly embracing their role as a leader, right? They're observing all these poor dynamics and not owning that it's their job to make them better. It could be a meeting that's overly bloated, just too many people in it, so that there's just a dysfunction that occurs due to the size of the group. People talking over one another, pressures to conform, kind of this notion of groupthink. So those are some of the syndromes that you see in the ineffective time.
Seems to me, I think you mentioned this in the book, and I can't remember the name of it's completely blanked on it, but where we naturally fill the space. So if we schedule an hour, we're going to fill an hour. Whereas if you did that with 30 minutes, and I can't think of the name of the
I can.
I hope so.
It's called Parkinsons Law.
That's it. I knew it was in my brain somewhere. So explain that.
Sure.
Because I think that's fascinating.
Well, thank you. So Parkinson's Law is the idea that work expands to fill whatever time is allotted to it. And the research is really pretty powerful around this concept. So if you schedule a meeting, for example, for an hour, magically it will take an hour, right? And so this works to be a real challenge in meetings, in that typically the default option on our scheduling programs is an hour. So lo and behold, meeting after meeting after meeting is an hour.
Right.
And that's just not a good reason. We have to determine meeting times in a much more strategic, thoughtful way, and not be locked into just this notion of an hour, given Parkinson's Law.
And so does it help us to put some pressure on ourselves to sort of get it done? I mean, is there a benefit to saying, this is an hour, we normally do this an hour, we're going to cut it down to 30 minutes, and we're going to go through exactly. Kind of like I remember when I was in college, right? And I've got a term paper due, right? I wait to the last minute, and then I crunch to get it done, but I get it done.
Right.
And
right. Well, we know, again, the research is pretty strong on this, that humans seem to perform optimally on some level of pressure. And it's kind of like an inverted U-shaped relationship, right? So No pressure leads to less than optimal performance. Moderate levels of pressure seem to lead to optimal performance. Too much pressure results in poor performance again. So we want to find that sweet spot, right, of having reasonable amounts of pressure, thus promoting focus. And I think that's where this concept, if we think a meeting is going to take, an hour, let's try to do it in 40 minutes. We don't want to be unreasonable, but there's also something really powerful about trying to use Parkinson's Law to our advantage and not our disadvantage.
One of the things I was really interested about was that it's sort of the leader's responsibility to frame the meeting and manage the meeting. But I like what you talked about in terms of the reframing it in terms of questions. Can you explain that? Because
Sure.
I found that really interesting.
Well, thank you. So when you think about agendas, most agendas are organized as a set of topics to be discussed, right? In this meeting, we're going to cover topic A, B, C, D. Well, there's an alternative. The alternative is framing your agenda as a set of questions to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very powerful change. When a meeting leader has to try to create a set of questions, they have to think at a much deeper level, right? They have to truly think about, well, what are the outcomes we actually want from this? So they think more, they become more intentional. By organizing your meetings as a set of questions, you have a better sense of who to invite to the meeting because they're relevant to the questions. You know when to end a meeting because the questions have been answered.
Right.
And if you just can't think of any questions, that might be your indication that a meeting is not necessary.
No meeting, right. No, that just makes so much sense to me. It really just makes so much sense to me. And you don't go off track, right? You're trying to answer a specific question.
Sure.
And it gives a level of focus to the meeting too, to me.
I agree. I mean, even think about your world, right? You do so many interviews. You think about your questions in advance. It doesn't mean that you won't be nimble, but the fact that you've thought about these questions in advance creates an opportunity for more meaningfulness and more respect for your guest's time.
Right. There's a focus to it, right? Yeah. And that's what it does. What is the other thing I was really curious about is the power of silence, because in meetings, I think we're all under the impression we've got to give, we've got to talk, there's a dialogue, and you talk about brainstorming in silence. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Silence could be one of the most powerful meeting tools, and it is an interactive tool. So first, let me share a research finding. So there is research that has compared groups who brainstorm in silence, basically just jotting their ideas down on index cards or into an app, versus groups that brainstorm with their mouths. And what they found is that those groups who brainstorm in silence generate nearly twice as many ideas. But maybe more importantly, the ideas tend to be more innovative and more disruptive. So let's think about why that would be the case. When you're brainstorming in silence, everyone can talk at once, right? You're no longer waiting for that person to speak. Furthermore, one person's contribution is not affecting your view of the challenge, right? So you're able to bring your full self to the ideation process.
Right.
And number three, you're not filtering based on what the boss said.
Right.
Right? So you have these forces that are just the perfect conditions for excellent brainstorming. And then, from silence and brainstorming, that can evolve to the next stage, right? So let's say that you do it on index cards or the app. Basically you have one idea per card, but then, the app can help you sort these things into piles based on conceptual similarity. And then the group can use an app to vote on which pile they think has the most merit. Again, this is all interaction. It's just not with voices. Yeah. And then you could even have the situation, I'm just going to take it even further, that the group looks at various ideas and they can just start typing in reactions and thoughts, and people could respond to other people's thoughts. So you can build a highly interactive environment without a word being spoken. Now, in the example I just shared, it was silence, 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 silence. It doesn't have to be that way. There's not a magic formula.
Right.
And that's, I think, one of the things that's really powerful about the book is I don't say that to have a good meeting, you have to do this, this, and then that, because the science doesn't support that. What the science supports is a leader making good choices, being intentional.
Yeah.
Not just falling into habits, but make choices. Make choices and honor people's time. So silence is this opportunity that, given what you want to accomplish and who's at the meeting, you can say, you know what? I think silence might be a perfect tool to getting it done. It does not mean you should do it every single meeting, because then it would become just an annoying habit again. But it's just a tool that's available to a meeting leader.
No, I mean, it's fascinating. But you're absolutely right, because I've been in these meetings where one or two voices control, and people fall in line intentionally or not intentionally.
Yes.
Right. And I've been guilty of facilitating meetings where I don't think everybody got the same voice.
Right.
And we probably missed things that were important because of that. So I totally get that. And I'm actually eager to try to implement that, because I think that's how you explained it is really, really powerful. And just, it could be game changing to a lot of people, particularly to make people feel included in things that, we all have unconscious bias. We all have faults, right? And we all, and some people are not some people do speak up, and they'll speak up loudly when others who probably have good ideas don't talk. And so I like that a lot. What, for you are sort of the keys to running a good meeting? I know that there's no one thing, but I know you've got like 7 or 10 ideas of like some of the basics. Like,
I have 2 million ideas in the book.
Right, you got 2 million in the book, right? And there were 7 random ones, right?
That's right. So I'll just share 2 that I think are meaningful. And so if I had a leader come to me and say, "Hey, listen, I want to make my meetings better."
I want to make my meetings better.
Okay.
Tell me.
And I can't say buy the book, so I won't throw that away, but I won't throw that out there. So I would say, first of all, embrace a different mindset. Embrace this mindset of being a good steward of others' time. Steward of others' time. Once we have that mindset, we actually start to think about our meetings very differently. When we have that mindset that we want to be a good steward, we start to make good choices. We start to think more carefully about the meeting and what success looks like. We think more carefully about who needs to be there. We fully recognize that while so many people complain about meetings, we don't want them to complain about our meetings, right? We want to be part of the solution. So just embracing this different mindset. And interestingly, we have this mindset all the time when it comes to meeting with customers or a boss's boss, right? We don't want those people to leave the meeting saying, "Boy, that was a waste," right? That would crush us. So we're motivated to make sure that we maximize the time of that powerful individual.
Right.
But when it comes to meeting with our directs or our peers, we just typically don't have that same mindset. So that's really an overarching general notion of the importance of mindset. And then something more specific, and I'm going to go unconventional, is if you forced me to say, what should a leader actually do? I would say, I want you to evaluate your meetings. I want you to send a quick survey, use Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, whatever it is, to the people who attend your regularly occurring meetings and ask them, what's going well, what's going not so well, and what can we do differently?
Okay.
Get the data, right? There's nothing more powerful to improving your meetings than understanding how individuals are experiencing your meetings. Take the challenge. Meeting leaders are not engaging in that simple act. And now when you kind of think of these 2 things, what does a steward do? A steward cares about other people's opinions, which is then solved by that second point of asking people's opinions. And when you learn what's on their minds about what's going not so well, then try new things. The beauty of 55 million meetings a day is there's lots of opportunities to try to get better.
What is in any of the research that you did, are there adding humor or adding I mean, what are some things, where are some, or do you have some examples of people who do some really creative things? I mean, you've talked to so many people about this.
Sure.
I'm just asking, like, what are some fun things that you could do to make some of these, I have a Monday morning meeting, right? And it's, everybody has a Monday morning meeting. And how do I get that to be more exciting?
So first of all, it's a neat question, because one of the things that we know is that the mood of a meeting actually matters. That when there's generally a positive mood state in the meeting, people tend to be more creative. They tend to listen to each other more carefully, and they tend to engage in more constructive decision making. So mood matters.
Okay.
Interestingly, the best predictor of collective mood is actually the mood state of the leader.
Right.
So what you bring into that room is really critical. Now, with kind of narrowing down my thinking, so what makes for a fun meeting?
Or is that necessary? I mean, like my question was really around the mood, right?
Okay.
How do
good.
you?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get it? Where people are uplifted, because
Sure.
that's what you want.
I like it. So I think the main thing is for a leader to kind of recognize that they're a host, and they are a host, right? They called this gathering together. So what are some of the things that a good host does? A host welcomes people. A host expresses appreciation. A host thanks people for giving them their time. A host makes introductions when people don't know each other. A host starts the meeting off strong, right? Really clarifying why everyone is there. And then sometimes, maybe you might be guessing where this is going, the best host has snacks.
There you go.
There's nothing wrong with having some snacks at a meeting.
Right.
But I do want to also circle back to something that you said, is that there's research that looks at humor in meetings.
Okay.
And what they find, so in general, humor comes in two flavors, right? There's the kind of the more friendly, constructive humor, and then there's this really biting humor that comes at the expense of others.
Right. Right.
Well, that constructive, more positive humor is actually associated with better meeting performance. So there's a clear linkage. So your meeting having some humor in it is a good thing. But I don't want leaders to feel like they have to manufacture this. It's similar to when I do training of teachers.
Okay.
What I try to do when I train teachers is I say, find your voice. Right? You don't need to copy my voice. Find your voice. How can you display passion? And passion can be displayed in lots of different ways. Passion is displayed by preparation.
Right.
Right? Passion is displayed by being focused and fully present. So there's lots of things that meetings leaders can do to create kind of a joyful environment. But I want to close this with one final thought around this question. That a high quality meeting leads to joy.
Yeah.
Right? So we often think that joy leads to high quality meeting. But when people feel their time is valued, when there's a good interaction, when that leader is facilitating, those things just promote a sense of positivity.
Indeed. No, that's so true. 1 minute. One quick question that just came up as I was thinking about this in today's world. So many people, and I think this is a huge challenge for organizations. So many people have remote workers now, and trying to bring remote teams together in a meeting online through, Skype or Zoom or whatever the platform is that a challenge that, what's your take on that challenge?
Yeah. So, remote meetings.
I know you got to go, but
it's fine. Remote meetings are absolutely wonderful for bringing folks together, It bridges incredible distances. It's a wonderful innovation in meetings. But at the same time, dysfunction tends to elevate in these remote meetings. You know, when you do survey research of what's the most dysfunctional meeting type, people will typically say the remote meeting. But interestingly, if you do a survey saying, what meeting type do you most prefer to attend?
Remote meetings.
And so why is that? Why do you think that's the case?
I'm perplexed.
So because they can multitask.
Okay.
So they can do other things.
Yep.
Well, that gives you a really clear state of the problem. So therefore, a meeting leader kind of running a remote meeting, they have to take it to the next level. Okay. They have to do whatever they can to make these meetings more visible. So when people can just fade into the background, they experience something called social loafing, which is a reduction of their own personal effort in the face of others. Okay. And that's really what prompts this multitasking. So when at all possible, you do video-based, right? Leaders are really playing the role of an air traffic controller. They're calling folks out. They're saying, hey, Gordon, what are your thoughts about this? Sasha, I haven't heard from you. Tell me what you're thinking about this, right? So they're just being really active with the facilitation. They might even be keeping a record of who's talking and who's not talking because it's on them to try to address that. Right. They're thinking very carefully about, who really needs to be there. I'm a big fan of changing the cadences around remote meetings. So keep them short and then have in between meeting time. So let's say we have a remote meeting to set up a problem, a challenge. Well, after that meeting, we could then throw a document in a Google Doc and tell people, hey, start generating solutions and start making comments on other people's solutions. And then we'll see where we're at. So you want to use meeting intervals more strategically because these remote meetings have some limitations and challenges. Right. And then one of the most controversial things that I've said in my book that has actually gotten me in trouble, but if you really read the book, it's not controversial, is I talk about how leaders and attendees of remote meetings should strive to have their meeting such that they do not need to push the mute button. Okay. Now, let's think about this for a moment. If you ban the mute button, what's then required of everyone?
They gotta talk.
They have to talk. They have to be in a quiet place. They can't be walking their dog. They can't be eating their lunch. They can't be going to the bathroom. They have to be present.
That's right.
So I like this idea of striving for a mute-free, that the mute button is not an option. Because if you think about it, when we're in the workplace, right, people don't have to mute themselves when they're sitting in a meeting, right? They're quiet, right? They are present. So I want to work, and I think this is what I talk about in the book, are different strategies for doing this, is trying to create a remote meeting where everyone is truly present. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the no mute button. But I'm guilty of the multitasking. I have to confess.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Hey, this has been great. This has been a fantastic conversation, and so thank you so much for your time. The book is The Science of Meetings: How You Can Lead Your Team to Peak Performance. We'll put a link on the program notes to the show, to the book. And any final words on the book that you want to talk about?
I'd love for folks to come to my website, thesurprisingscience.com, or go to my website, stephenrogelberg.com. I have additional resources there. And I certainly hope that people will check out The Surprising Science of Meetings.
And you also speak. So if you can book that, you can be in contact with you through the website there if they want to have you come and give your talk, because I think it's pretty powerful. So thank you so much. Thank you, out there for spending your lunch hour or your morning with us, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll see you tomorrow afternoon at 12 noon. If you want to check out the upcoming schedule, it's powerlunch.live. And we also do conventions and events. We can bring the show on the road. So be in touch with us if you're interested in having a LinkedIn Live at your event or conference. And till tomorrow, have a good day. Go out and do good work.